Welcome to the Traveler 2025 Mayday event. I'm your host, Frank Zuccardi of Cyborg Prime Games. I'm very honored to have my guest today, Mr. Marc Miller, our humble and benevolent emperor and the creator of Traveler. Thanks, Marc, for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Hey, we wouldn't have a Mayday without you. So, yes, thanks for providing us the opportunity for another excuse to play Traveler and have a nerdy holiday. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you also. You've been supporting this event from the beginning, and it means a lot to me. So thank you personally for doing that.
You know, Frank, it means a lot to me personally as well. I think Mayday's our little celebration holiday. We get it in 4 days before May the 4th Be With You comes up, and so we get 4 days of pre-Star Wars Traveler stuff.
Right.
And appreciate you helping us celebrate it.
And our play on words is better. So, Marc, you've told the origins.
I'm gonna interrupt you for just a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Is that reversed? Can people read it? They can't read it, you know?
Yeah, they can. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I can read it.
You know, we were trying to make the Traveler box cover sometime in early 1977, and I was working with our brilliant art director, Rich Banner. He's the one who came up with the black box and the red line and the Optima typeface.
Mm-hmm.
And it was empty. We didn't have any artwork, and he said, write some words to go up here. And he sent me off, and I had to come back within 20 minutes with those words.
Mm-hmm.
And I just made those words up, and they just worked.
You didn't have
And here we are, almost
you didn't have to
50
go back
years
and do
later,
another draft.
and Mayday, Mayday, and it's still fun.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a great story about that. You didn't have to edit the text at all. You pretty much just first draft.
It didn't have, nobody edited my work. They just said, okay, sure, that's fine, Marc. You just go ahead.
Oh, that's cool. What made you come up with that scenario, or why? Because it kind of does. I mean, before you buy the game, you're kind of have this image evoked from that. Was that your intention? I mean, how did you distill that nugget?
I like formulas. I like things that tell me what to do. And I struggled. They would keep coming to us and say, Marc or Frank or Lauren, write a box back, or write the subtitle for this game box. And I came up with a statement which was, the cover has to make, what we want the people to do is pick that box up and look at the front, and if they're intrigued, they will turn their wrist 180 degrees and look at the back. But if we don't intrigue them, if we don't catch their imagination, they just put it back and go to the next one. And I was struggling at this point, trying to figure out what that formula was. And the formula was, yes, I have to get them, catch their attention. And can't tell them everything on the front. And I didn't. But those words make me want to look at the back and see what else there is to see. Mm-hmm. And it was one of my more successful moments.
It really does capture the imagination and make you think, like, what's going on here? Why are they in a fight? Did they just have an accident? Maybe they got hit by a meteorite? Probably a fight. But it kind of opens up your mind to like all the possibilities and that Traveler offers. So yeah, I guess why it's endured. Yeah. Cool. So you've told us the origin story of Traveler before. So without getting into too much detail, for new folks who came along, can you tell us briefly, like, how you got involved in gaming and what inspired the creation of Traveler?
I got involved in gaming because I was a bachelor in college, just wasting my time, not a lot of focus on what I was doing. And I was looking for something to do. I thought chess would be great, If actually, when I was doing it, chess was a big thing. There was a lot of television coverage, and Bobby Fischer, which dates me, shows how long ago that was. But when I actually interacted with other chess players, they were very laser focused on chess and didn't want to talk much about anything else. And at the time, Frank Chadwick and Rich Banner were running the Strategic Games Club at Illinois State University. And they put up a poster, and it attracted me enough that I came to a game. I came to a game session. And these were nice, friendly people who talked about all kinds of things, and their subject matter just ranged widely. They were friendly. There was people that I got along with, and I really liked that. That was fun. Playing games is, Frank, I'll tell you this. Back then, gaming was just kind of something that nobody knew about. There weren't a lot of games. There weren't a lot of people playing them. And we just had a good time.
What was the extent of the war games back then? Was this like
Panzer Blitz?
Panzer Blitz, okay,
Panzer Blitz,
okay.
which was very
Squad
popular.
Leader?
No, it didn't have Squad Leader yet.
Okay.
Had D-Day, Avalon Hill games.
Mm-hmm.
If you really were working hard, you could find this SPI games, but there weren't a lot of them yet either.
Mm.
And it attracted a high school, college men. There weren't a lot of women in the hobby,
Mm.
but it was fun, and nobody thought much about it. Here we are, 50 years later, and families play it. It's part of situation comedy taglines. The mainstream of American life. I just met somebody at a party yesterday, and first thing you talked to Catan, which is a totally different thing from what we had then.
Mm-hmm.
But games touch people's lives more than us, more than we know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a great addition to American world society. So
yeah, I've noticed we just got a Barnes & Noble here, and they have a pretty big game area, and man, there's so many new games and like new like board games and things, and yeah, I'm happy to see that, because I always loved board games growing up, and I was afraid that people weren't really doing that as much. But we actually have a board game club in town that meets at a local pub, and yeah, aside from gaming, tabletop gaming, I would say like Robo Rally has probably been the big attraction for our family. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing Robo Rally with everybody who will take the time to learn it. It's great.
Yeah, once you've learned it, a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm harking back to when I got into board gaming. Most of the real board games were Monopoly and Candyland, and not much else. The games did not have a lot of depth to them. Now, pick a subject. Not just I'm big on war games myself, but Catan or Plant World or any number of subjects. If there's something you're in, national parks, if there's a subject you're interested in, somebody's making a game about it, and you can sit down with more than just your age range friends. You can play with kids, you can play with adults, older adults. There's always something to do. And it's good, clean fun. Yeah.
So back when you started playing war games, were you playing with like cardboard chits, or were you playing on what was that old tank game, Grenadier, that you played on with lead tanks on a sand table? That
we were
must have
playing
come later.
we were playing with paper chips
Hmm.
on maps,
Okay.
and this I've told this story before, but the Games Club talked student government into buying us 1,000 blank hex grids, 22 by 28 inches, which we could draw on with markers and make our own war game maps. And somebody would make a map and somebody else would accumulate their pieces, and it'd be little cardboard chips. They'd pick an era. It would be Napoleonic era or even ancients or modern with tanks, and sit down and play for 2 or 3 hours trying to conquer that particular terrain we'd made up. There's a lot of just fun.
Did you come up with like a kind of like a basic rule set that you guys were like reskinning, or were you trying out different kinds of like all new games and new mechanics with each of these, or a combination?
Well, basically we had to start somewhere, so we would reskin something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Napoleon at Waterloo. Something is one of the SPI rules, really. Very simple military symbol, attack factor, movement factor, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would experiment. I mean, Frank Chadwick was into World War II stuff, and we would do a kind of a tactical thing. I remember the little tank factor, the tank counters would roar through something, and then he would roll the dice and he'd say, "They're shaken." What does shaken mean? I mean, how do you shake tanks? But he kind of got out, okay, their morale is challenged. And it wasn't detailed rules. He was just telling us what happened. And it turned into things that he did later that he had to reduce to rules. But we were his test subjects, and he would do something, and if we didn't understand it, he'd have to start over because that was fun. It was just,
yeah, sure.
And some of it's the observation effect. It's nice having somebody who really knows how all this works, guiding your hand and telling you, oh, you shouldn't do that, you should do this. A great learning experience.
Right. And so how did that lead to you getting a job as a game designer? Or were they unrelated?
Again, Frank Chadwick and Rich Banner responded to a call for proposals. The university wanted to see what we could do to innovate in educational systems. And the library suggested that they put branch library collections of basic books in the residence halls. That's very innovative. Oh, good. Frank and Rich's proposal was, let's design games to teach in the classroom. And it's interesting because they got a grant to make this happen. And so Frank Chadwick was the executive director. And Rich Banner was the art director. They both picked their titles. And so they asked me to come on board and help. Paid minimum wage, so I got to be chief designer. We had a lot of chiefs and not a lot of Indians. But we would meet with teachers, with instructors, and talk about what they wanted to try and teach in their classroom. And we would talk about how we could do it with educational games.
That's really visionary and far looking because nowadays we know about the value of gamification in education.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm impressed on a lot of gamification, not just in higher education, but the Dietz Foundation here in Illinois is doing some really good work with military gaming, educating junior officers. Not only here, but in other nations as well. There's no just one way to do it. Games is a way that people can get involved. That books and book learning and PowerPoint presentations don't cut it.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. So you guys started. Who came up with the idea or the company name?
Rich Banner came up with the name. I wasn't privy to the thought process. I always thought it was related to Children's Television Workshop, which does Sesame Street, and it was just getting started then at that time. But boy, talk about missing the boat. I never asked, where did you come up with that name? I just thought it was nice and went with it.
Yeah. All right. So, how did that eventually lead to creating Traveler?
GDW, Game Designers Workshop, and I like to say the legendary, an obligatory adjective in front of it, the legendary Game Designers Workshop. Just because it's amazing what the company did with so few resources and so little capital. We were war game oriented, board war games, a map. Once we figured out how to do die cut counters and print large maps, printing rules is easy. It's a nice package. People are used to it, and that was the process that we used. And so we did obscure war games. We did strange situations. We were kind of edging into science fiction games. And D&D was a big deal. It was taking the country by storm, or a small part of the country by storm. And I tell this story, and I'll tell it again because I think it shows what we were doing at Game Designers Workshop. We learned about Dungeons and Dragons. It took all of us. We were all playing in each other's games. We were having a wonderful time. And after about 3 weeks, company president Frank Chadwick said, "You can't play D&D while the sun is up," because we were getting no work done. We had deadlines to meet. We had work to do, and nobody was doing any work. We kept playing. We played just as much D&D as we had before. We had to do it after the sun went down.
And now we did it as vampires.
and that's a problem in the summer because the sun doesn't go down until pretty late.
Right.
After about a year, it just struck me that there wasn't a science fiction space D&D game. And I said, I'm going to do a science fiction role-playing game. And GDW had a kind of a distributed management system. Everybody did whatever they wanted to, unless somebody told them you can't play when the sun's up, that sort of thing. And so I said, I want to do that. And everybody said, sure, you go ahead. And that we always allowed all of us to try what we wanted to, and I came up with the Traveler character generation system first thing. And it clearly I'm influenced by D&D. I mean, Traveler's characteristics, strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, education, and social standing is clearly drawn from D&D. It's clearly structured. It's a reaction to it. We always had trouble getting those multi-sided dice, and so we had a lot of six-sided dice, and so let's go with six-sided dice. That's easy. We'll do that. Again, a reaction to what they had and what we wanted to do. But I did the Traveler character generation system, and I hauled that out. I had printed up things and got a bunch of people to try it, and they all just howled when their character died, and they went back and made another character, and then they wanted to tell us about their character. I really got them interested. That got us off the ground. That motivated everybody to want to participate in testing this, in contributing ideas to this. And that was the start. I enjoyed doing it, but everybody really got involved once we had something to motivate them.
How did people feel about dying during character creation? And did you have to tune that at all?
Fun. That is so stupid, they said. Yet they just started up and
shrug and go, space is dangerous.
This is one of the things that I talk about at Game Designers Workshop. We were not very good at testing our games because it takes a lot of work to get somebody to be expert at a brand new game you've just designed. And we were cranking out games left and right. And so I did a game on the opening days of World War II in the Pacific, 1942. And it's a nice little simple game. And we did some rudimentary testing. But there were some flaws in it. And one of our gamers sat down and just beat it to death and figured out how to fix it and made those fixes. That was John Estelle. We ended up hiring him. But you can't just get that for every game. So what we did is we learned how to look at these games and catch most of the problems just by reading it. I mean, I still do that. Somebody can show me a game and I will be very opinionated on what works, what doesn't work. You need to do this, simplify. I know what you're trying to do, but you've made it too complex, or you've made it too easy, or whatever it is. Or I noticed this rule says this, and this rule says that, and they're contradictory. Most of the game designers at GDW were capable of handling that in some way, and that's what we did. Well,
so you all considered yourself part of the quality assurance process?
I do. We had no separate. Too small a company couldn't afford a separate quality control system, quality assurance system.
Right.
So, where are we? I've lost my train of thought.
Well, we're talking about the origins of Traveler and why you decided on six-sided dice and how it was comparing. Oh, I was going to ask you, was there any influence or competition with other sci-fi titles at the time? Because I'm not sure what the timeline is, but I remember back when I first started getting into gaming, I liked D&D, but as soon as Gamma World came out, I switched to that because I like sci-fi better. And then then there was like Star Frontiers, and I guess before Gamma World there was Metamorphosis Alpha kind of. So there was an early kind of sci-fi gaming soup, but where did Traveler arrive in that group, or how did it distinguish itself? And kind of
Star Frontiers came later, so but the competitions were Starfaring from Flying Buffalo, which was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, quick and dirty system. It really was, in that sense, it really wasn't serious. Metamorphosis Alpha predated Gamma World, the same system, but that's science fantasy more than science fiction. It's not even space opera. It's mutants, and it's kind of a D&D in space. It really is a D&D in space. And it came out 6 months to a year before Traveler. And so in that sense, Traveler was the first serious science fiction role-playing system. There were others that tried later, the Star Quest or Space Quest, Star Frontiers.
Isn't there a game called Space Opera?
Space Opera, that was several years later. D&D is filled with lists of things. And sometimes you can see how Gary struggled to complete those lists. It's fine, he can have a Balrog, he can have a dragon, he can have a red dragon and a green dragon and a golden dragon. He can have orcs, and he can have goblins, and he just reached into all of the. I'm not faulting him. I think he's doing exactly what he should do, which is he reached into all of literature and talked about the supernatural things or the magical things that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Then he had to do something else, and he came up with the blink dog. He was making things up, and some of those are successful and some of them weren't.
Mm-hmm.
I say I like to have formulas, and I didn't want to just make up something. My system is always, my preferred system is always, let's roll dice for it. How many arms, how many legs, how many heads does this monster have? And if you make up a table, you can find out how fast it is, and you're competing not against somebody's times challenged imagination, but against the dice.
Mm-hmm.
And the dice are going to tell you, oh, this is easy, or oh, this is going to be a problem. Maybe you ought to back off and regroup. So Traveler is full of lists of, full of processes to make things, rather than telling you what those things are.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're dealing not with just one dungeon or one world, we're dealing with a million worlds, and so you have to do it that way. There's no way I can differentiate otherwise. And that's the difference between fantasy and science fiction.
I've always liked the construction tables for everything. I mean, building worlds, building characters, building animals. Oh, it's a pouncer. Oh, it's a grazer. Even the languages later on, you could form different words based on diphthongs and different kinds of, parts of words kind of strung together into alienese,
And exactly real. Right. And the same way, Frank Chadwick had some preferences on what kind of sounds he wanted in word languages, and so you can kind of pick out the words that he made up because they all tend to the same diphthongs and vowel consonants and vowel combinations and that sort of thing. I have my own thoughts. And I wanted to reach beyond that into a more universal thing, which is why we have language generation. You end up with words then that sound strange because they are strange. They're not just me trying to think up a word real quick and it being, pig Latin or something.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets me onto sidetrack subject, which is like, when you first created Traveler, did you think people would put so much of their own love into it? Like, for instance, Jeff Kazimierski, who's done the Zedetl Language and Cultural Institute, and he's coming up with a whole language of the Zedetl language, or like Joshua Bell, who decided, it'd be cool to have an online traveler map, and made that happen, and the Geomorphs guy, and all these people who have kind of taken what you've created and kind of put their own passion into it and expanded on the travel world. What's your thoughts on that?
There's some small egotistical part of me that thinks it's mine and you have to do it my way. But the truth is, Traveler works because it resonates with people. Some part of it resonates with some people on things they want to do. I get testimonials. I collect them. Maybe we'll print them all out and post them on the board at my funeral, of people who talk about what Traveler has done for them, and that they couldn't read, didn't want to read, didn't care about reading until they got Traveler, and then they read and they got everything they needed. They didn't understand math, and then they had to do math for Traveler, and it meant something to them. They impressed people because they knew what hexadecimal was, or what vectors was, or how to handle negative numbers because they were doing it in Traveler, and it helped them. And now he's an astrophysicist. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did that. I'm so proud. I did it for that guy. I didn't do it for that guy. He found a channel just like some people found Harry Potter, and it works for them.
Right.
But I am proud that we have a product, a thing, an experience that people can make their own and enjoy and they're still enjoying it 50 years later.
For me, it helped me practice my programming because I made a bunch of like world decoding, programs. I learned the metric system. So thanks a lot.
You talk about programming. I was visiting Dave Saring at Judges Guild once upon a time, and we were going to go to lunch, and somebody came up to him and said, Dave, this particular line isn't complete on this product and it has to go to press. And he literally pulled out a 6-sided dice, rolled it, and dictated what went in that hole. But he was dictated by the dice to fill the hole. He didn't even have to give it any thought. And my point is that rolling dice is tedious. We had computers that ran BASIC, and the Spinward Marches data was computer BASIC generated rather than dice generated in hand rolled dice, because I couldn't be bothered to roll 432 star systems by myself. And as it was, I spent days and days programming it and testing it, and then it ran out. And we are still using those worlds today, and they are very, very intriguing, independent of their creation. And it's just as valid as taking a map of England, of the British Isles, and flopping it and turning it into Westeros and Easteros and whatever Game of Thrones is. So I had the system made up some of the words, but I had to come up with other words because I wanted recognizable words. And the one that I remember is the important world in Spinward Marches is Regina. And I'm sitting here looking around, wondering what word am I going to use, and my eyes landed on a little electric broom I had, a Regina brand electric broom, and I just stole the name, and there it is.
Hey man, it's good as anything.
Exactly.
It works, right? Nobody knows. And that's kind of the thing about like making the random languages, because as an outside listener to another language, it just sounds like random noises,
Yes, it does. I know. And that's the problem. It sounds like random noises.
So that's a perfect way to like simulate that with the table. Yeah, and I always like the procedural way you laid out like how to do stuff. It was very programming oriented for me to just like pretty much convert that directly into a program, and it made like the character creation process is has a lot of steps, but the way you had it outlined, do this, then do this, and then you had some like 2 or 3 sub steps, and it was laid out in a nice step-by-step kind of summary, easy to follow. So I always appreciated that. Some of the charts and things I've seen that are like flow charts, and it's like crazy. But I always like throw that out and I go back to the old list of text about the process. I'm at step 8.1, like whatever. It's a lot easier to follow for me. So after you created Traveler, and what was it the big, or did you have other big titles at GDW, or was Traveler pretty much the pinnacle of game designs, game design?
We had 4 designers. Well, we had a lot more than that, but we had 4 designers on staff: Rich Banner, Frank Chadwick, myself, and Lauren Wiseman. We had the Europa system. That's a great idea. Let's have a hex grid war game of all of European World War II at 25 miles to the hex. I mean, that's a map 10 feet on a side. You can't reach Switzerland if the whole map is put together, because there's no way to reach that far. That was a fun system. a challenging system. And I'm proud that I did some of the work on some of the games. It was other people mostly doing that.
Mhm.
We had interesting war games. We liked to do obscure games. So one of my first war games was Chaco, the Chaco War. Nobody's heard of it. I hadn't heard of it before it came up. Bolivia versus Paraguay, 1932 to 35, 36. It's being reissued by Compass Games. It makes me very proud. One of my first games, and it's important enough that somebody is reprinting it. And people are going to buy it. We were big on modern warfare. We had assault, modern tactical warfare. We had Third World War system, reproducing the Third World War for all of Europe. We did all kinds of things. Traveler, I like to think that Traveler was important. It was important to the game, to the company. But we had other game systems that were equally important. We did Twilight 2000. We didn't know how to do modern military role playing because it's no fun playing modern military role playing as anything except a general, because you have to do what other people tell you. And the brilliance there was driving back from a convention in Texas, all of us sitting in a kind of a passenger van talking about this, and we worked out that if society collapses and it's dystopic chaos, and you don't have to do what other people tell you. You're just yourselves. Military weapons and military vehicles, and that's what people wanted, but without having to do what a captain or a major or a colonel above you tells you what to do. The tagline on the box back is the entire European front in World War II has collapsed, and we can't do anything about it. You're trapped behind enemy lines. You're on your own. It's a great tagline because it gives the freedom of action that role players want, and yet it still feels like it's authentic.
Right.
So, GDW, the legendary Game Designers Workshop, did all kinds of games. As I say, we had four designers on staff. But you reach out, and we published John Prado's Pearl Harbor, World War II in the Pacific game. We published John Hill's games. We published Larry Bond's games. We published a game by Gary Gygax. It was a disaster, not because it was a bad game, but because of legal issues. But GDW, a game designers workshop, was staffed or supported by a lot of game designers who are still important names in the history of gaming.
When you told that story about rolling the die, it reminded me of a episode of The Simpsons where Gary Gygax meets The Simpsons and he has to roll for his own reaction.
Yes.
It's a hello. Throws a die. Nice to meet you. Yeah, it's pretty funny how that stuff snuck into pop culture, and now with the popularity of Stranger Things, people are really picking up D&D again and having a second look at it, and kind of having a D&D resurgence, and tabletop gaming in general. I think there's a lot of I see a lot of growth in the traveler world. The traveler groups on on Facebook are gigantic and growing all the time. The one I'm running has 2,000 over 2,000 people in it. Some of the other ones I've seen 3,000. It's just it's popular, still popular. And yeah, people are like, I forgot about this game, or I saw this on YouTube, and I had to look it up or whatever. And it's kind of like a long lost friend that people forgot about, or like my old pen pal or something.
That's right. And it's possible that your role-playing game experience or your preferences are, backpacks full of binders and notes and plans, but essentially you can show up with a handful of dice and your imagination, and you can have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to come back, but you could have a good time. I think in modern America, modern world gaming, everybody knows how to play a role-playing game, at least rudimentarily.
Mm-hmm.
There's no special thoughts. You just bring yourself and your imagination. And if you're an obnoxious person, you can play an obnoxious character. And maybe they won't invite you back. but you can role play as much or as little as you want to and have a good time. And it's a good experience. A good experience.
I played an obnoxious character, and you just made me think if I'm obnoxious.
I heard this. Somebody who said that there's always that one weird person in your group, and if you don't know who it is,
it's you.
It's you.
Good point. Yes, I decided it would be fun or funny to play a character kind of like Dr. Smith, who's kind of cowardly and to know it all.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so the other players are like, they spring into action when there's a fight. I'm hiding under a table, and going, go find your own table. So yeah, I was like, I wonder how long they're gonna like put up with me and not throw me out an airlock, but it's been almost a year now. Yeah, so all right, so let's talk about one more thing before we kind of move on. Traveler's been through a lot of editions and revisions, and you mentioned before that you're kind of even when you're not the one like putting it out, you're kind of on an advisory board. Has that advisory board always advised all the versions of Traveler since you were the license holder, right? Or did you just let people have freedom with whatever edition, and then you just give it your blessing? Like how involved are you?
I've been I kind of set the standards and let people do what they are driven to do. I'm concerned about the higher level control. I want it to be good, clean fun. I mean, the world's X-rated dungeon, I don't want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Trollops in space, I don't think we need to do that.
Right.
And once I set those standards, and I sense from whoever I'm working with that they say, there are several responses. One is, I don't have a problem with that, which is, I don't care. But another one is, oh, I agree completely. I mean, there's no need to go into that stuff because there's so much fun and interest that could be happening anyway in this system. And so once I've vetted them that way, then I have to trust their imagination to do things that are interesting and intriguing. And the marketplace will, if what they're doing doesn't work, they'll stop doing that and they'll do something else that does work. And it's not so much me telling them as the marketplace telling them, I didn't like that adventure. That's not fun.
Mm.
People really like deck plans. People really like, lists of characters and information about characters. There are some things they like and some things they don't really care about. So
Mm-hmm.
Everybody tends to make things that they think that resonate with themselves and they hope will resonate with others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. So what have you been up to since we saw you last Mayday? I heard that you had transferred the Traveler intellectual property over to Mongoose, and now you're just doing T5. Is that true?
Well,
How'd that go?
so several years ago, we were all shocked and saddened when Greg Stafford died. And he was Chaosium, he was Pendragon, he was RuneQuest, and I was pleased, I was interested to see Chaosium speak up almost immediately and say that Greg put a succession plan in place, a contingency plan, and so his work would continue as opposed to just get lost. And I thought that was a good idea. It's not easy to just, oh, I'll make a contingency plan too.
Mm-hmm.
I am getting older, and I could drop dead any day now. Hopefully not, but I could. And it would be a shame if everything was chaos, if that happened. So I've been working with Mongoose for some time, and I'm happy with what they're doing. They meet my standards, both of paying attention instead of just looting the Traveler system. They're thoughtful. They're imaginative. They have standards, and so when the time came, we were talking about a long-term plan to transfer the ownership of Traveler to them. Not only ownership, management. I mean, I'm a one guy, they're a company.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some discussions over the course of a year and came to a conclusion, and we say transfer, I sold the property to them.
Mm-hmm. So they gotta have a license, like anybody who's licensing Traveler, the license is also transferred over to them. Mm-hmm.
And so they're the company in charge now rather than me. They respect me. They pay attention to me. They say, "Oh, Mark, this is what we're doing," and I say, "Oh," and they say, "Yeah, but it's this and whatever," and we talk about it.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about letting that go and kind of retiring from Traveler? Not completely, because you're still doing T5, right?
Well, I'm allowed to do T5. It's theirs.
Oh, okay. I see. They completely have all Traveler stuff.
They are the corporate owner of everything.
Oh, okay.
I've got some books in my archive in my warehouse, and I sell those still, but it's under an arrangement with them.
I see.
So I'm moving. I'm moving to spiritual advisor emeritus.
Mm-hmm. How does it feel though to kind of retire from Traveler?
And I can never let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of my DNA.
Sure.
But I have a lot of fun things to do with a lot of responsibilities not on my shoulders.
Right.
And that frees me up considerably.
Mm-hmm.
I'm filled with stories on what I want to tell in Traveler.
Sure.
And I can still do that. So.
All right.
I am.
All right, cool. And what else have you been up to? Working on a comic book?
Oh, my comic books. See, I think that comic books are a way of conveying information. We'll see how it works, but the comic book format is accessible to anybody. A lot of what games do, role-playing games do, is fill books with lots of text. Traveler 5 is an example. That's a lot of words on a lot of pages.
Mm-hmm.
And it beats the subject to death. It has to. It's rules. It's how rules work. We have to think of the cases and the exceptions and everything else. Traveler 5 is my magnum opus. And it deals with things that I have been struggling with for years on how do you do character generation? What are some of the details? How do you do world generation? What about stellar classes? What color is the star? All those things. One of the standards of role playing, of games in general, is that people don't want simpler versions on the second edition. They want more answers, not fewer answers. They don't want it simplified. They want to know more and more and more. That's why 5th edition D&D is a lot more than the little 3 books of 0th edition D&D. But that's for the referee. That's for the game master. That's for the deep dive into the system. What about getting a bunch of friends together, including my cousin or somebody at Thanksgiving? Let's sit down and do this. Oh, let me explain to you how this works. 9,000 years ago, the alien race did this, and there's a lot of information that really isn't necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think comic books, I can make a comic book that in 15 pages or 25 pages or 40 pages tells people a lot of stuff easily. And even the process of making a comic book format thing makes me figure what's important to put in there and what's not. Do I really have to say how thick the walls are on the starship? I don't. All I have to do say is here's a room, there's a room. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm fooling with. And there's so much that I want to do in this format. And so I've been spending my time working on it. And,
what are some of the topics that you're interested in covering?
Well, I was showing
Character generation.
So several years ago, I went to Gen Con. Peter Atkinson had me as a guest, and I was doing Traveler character generation. You can die in character generation. I had a nice little thing that I'd printed up, and that was fun to play with. And everybody sat down, and they generated 3 characters, some of whom died and some didn't. They got to take some dice away, and it was a good, fun experience. Based on that experience, I have created a comic book called Can You Survive Traveler Character Generation?
Cool.
And it's not just, it doesn't just start out with character generation. It talks about, well, this is titillating you because how can you possibly see what that is? It talks about why you're playing Traveler, and then generate a character, and some of them will die and some of them weren't, and how to record it at least rudimentarily on a piece of paper so that you can work from it.
Does it give like play examples or?
No, it's just characters. I want to do a sequel to it, which would be Let's Play Traveler. And, I don't have to give 80 pages of rules. It's here's how money works. Here's how you use your characteristics to resolve issues. Here's what some basic equipment is. There's free RPG Day, and I think most people who pick up the free RPG are collectors. And frankly, I'm not sure how you can do a free RPG in whatever format that is, because there are some of them out there, but for the most part, it's hard to make something. And this thing is a free RPG. If you put this in front of somebody, and it's not just for free RPG Day, but it's for somebody, they can generate a character, and at the end of that time, they're either hooked or they aren't. And if they aren't, move on.
Right.
But
otherwise, you got like a warm lead for your game.
Yeah, that's it. So it's a longer term project, but one of the projects I have is a 3-book set. Can you survive? And then Let's Play Traveler, which if that works for you, here's the basic things. And it's more about talking about player agency, is telling people this is what you do and this is why you're doing it and this is the choices you get to make. And isn't this fun? It doesn't have to be filled with rules.
Sure.
It's filled with enabling, so players have some idea what they can do. And if that comic book is laying on the table and the play gets dull or caught up in something, or they get bored, they can look at the comic book and it tells them facts that are really helpful to them. So I think that's fun. I think that's a valuable part of Traveler. I think Wizards ought to steal it, Pathfinder ought to steal it and make their own, because I think it's a way of getting people into it. Okay, that's one thing. I've been playing Traveler for 50 years. I know all the secrets of why things are and where they came from. And I'm working on a series that tells those secrets to you. So, boy, the secrets of the ancients.
Oh, the story of the ancients.
Where did that come from? I think that and why was the ancient war fought? I can't open this up. There's nothing inside.
Shh, don't tell us. Don't break the illusion.
But anyway, that's a whole series that I'm trying to do.
I think that's a great idea. I was hearkening back to when I first started playing Traveler, and I remember feeling like overwhelmed by like, what do I do? Like, it's just a wide universe. You could do anything, but what do you do?
What do you do? Yes.
Yeah. So laying some stuff out like, you could save the Galactic Princess, or you could, strike it rich in a gold mine or whatever. There's just giving examples of.
Which one do I choose? And as the referee, which one do I impose on the players? And as the players, I don't want to do that. And so
they don't know it's possible, so they don't know what to do.
Yeah, and so we were looking at the cover of Traveler, and so one of them I'm working on is Free Trader Beowulf, a guide to that ship. Why is it called Beowulf? What's it look like inside? Who's the crew? How does it work? What do they do? The rules cover how it works. This is telling people what the rules are going to tell you. I see a 3-book set. There's a 3-book set here. One is this, which is a guide to the ship. The next one is a guide to the crew with some created crews and some cargo manifests and that sort of thing. And the third one is about the Spinward Main, about a string of worlds that ship can go to and buy stuff here and sell stuff there. The game rules cover all that easily. Joshua Bell's Traveler map covers that. But where do you start? These are references that sit on the table, and somebody will say, hey, I was just reading this, and it said that the stateroom is double occupancy. I didn't know that. Things that people can use, things that can intrigue them. Who knows where it's going to take them? But that's what I'm trying to do. And the whole purpose is, it's almost a definition that we gamers love comic books. We're predisposed. It's a companion industry. We love comic books and we like gaming. And comic books are a very useful way of conveying information. And we have to remember that we are the deep rules guys, but our players aren't.
Mm-hmm.
We have to convey to them information to help them enjoy this, and then that keeps them coming back.
Mm.
So that's my structure right now, and I'm going to do a Kickstarter in August, I think, which will be this Beowulf free trader Beowulf thing. I've got a good production system that will make good comic books. It's nice to have nice ones, and they'll look good. You'd be proud to have it on your gaming table. And we know that fancy color covers make people open things up and look at them, and your players will be happy and keep coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I used to volunteer at my friend's comic book store, and this is right after Image Comics and Dark Horse Comics kind of started putting out these like really amazingly inked comics, and they just kind of changed the industry. And kind of up the game for all comic publishers. And nowadays comics look a lot different from the comics that we had when we were growing up, and probably even more different from the ones you had when you were growing up.
Even more than mine. And you know, I keep trying to reproduce those comics, and they don't make them that kind of grubby paper anymore at all. Mm-hmm. But when I first did this, I was kind of cowed by the idea of color. I was looking at black and white interiors, but color makes it a lot more interesting, and images help. Comic book images help us. They are as important. A picture is 1,000 words.
Yep. It inspires people's imagination, you know, and maybe they see that and they go, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way, or they go, oh, that's brilliant, or, you know, whatever.
Oh, is that how it's supposed to be? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So what are aside from comics, have you been working on any other writing projects? Are you coming out with any new Agent of the Imperium books, or?
My publisher for Agent of the Imperium said, I need a short story for us to put on our website. So I had to write a short story, which I did. It's called The Red Ship. And it's free on their website. It's a short story. It's nice. I wrote another one just because I had to get it out of my system. And it's called Names. And I got I have some of them printed up. I throw them in orders that I ship out. I've got a barcode, a QR code, and people can get them and download them. And so I'm trying to tell those stories. I'm interesting stories. I'm working on the sequel to Agent, but it's not as it follows, but it's not the same characters. You know, the joy of Traveler is that it's this wonderful universe that we've made up, and we all contribute to it. And there are little things that we just threw in, and I wonder what they mean. And one of them is, if you read Agent, you know that our characters don't really respect psionics. They think it's a bunch of hogwash. They know it works, but they still don't respect it. And that's not what we have in the Golden Age, where we actively fear it and we suppress it, and we will work against that. It is socially unacceptable to do psionics. It's distasteful. And I wonder why that is. And so I'm working on something I call the Suppressions, about why public opinion in the Imperium turned against psionics and what that process was. I think that's fun. I think
that sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I'm working on that, and I hope to have that out next year. Cool. And of course, I would love to follow very quickly with my story of the Fifth Frontier War and the heroics of Duke Norris. Everybody wants to hear that story. I want to hear it too. So I try to do both at the same time.
Do you have a big backlog of planned books? And if so, how do you decide like which thing to do next?
I'm a multitasker. I've got the comic books, which I'm enjoying doing. I want to do the Suppressions because I think it's necessary to tell why we hate psionics before we get into what that means in the universe. I started writing my novel of the Fifth Frontier War, a long time ago, and it's slowly evolving in my mind what that means and what actually happened. So, big backlog. So what'll I get done? Who knows? But I'm trying.
All right.
My role model is George R.R. Martin.
I'll just back burner it for a few years and maybe finish it later. Yeah. He lives here in Santa Fe. We see him all the time. He's a character. He shows up at the Comic-Con down in Albuquerque, and he's super friendly, really nice guy. And anyway,
well, I know he is.
He purchased like an old art house venue and refurbished it, and shows Game of Thrones there. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, he used to make the round. He still makes the round. He did make the rounds of science fiction conventions, and I can remember him when I first met him. And he had a little carton of books that he was selling at his feet. It wasn't the big deal that he was now.
Right.
But you got to put in your time.
Yep, you got to pay your dues. So, we were talking before the interview a little bit about Starship Geomorphs and if they're compatible with Traveler 5. What are your thoughts on?
Robert Pierce is this great artistic and thoughtful person. And so he did Starship Geomorphs, and after a while he revised it, and that's the one that's currently available on drive-through for free, no less, or in a print-on-demand hardcover for a ridiculous price of like $25. It's a great product to just fill the holes. He's drawn from all of science fiction, and so if you wanted to do Star Trek, everything he has looks like Star Trek. Could be used for Star Trek or Star Wars or Traveler or anything you want to. But it really is Traveler stuff. It works for Traveler, and that's
right.
great.
For folks who aren't totally familiar with it, so he's put out like crew rooms and different parts of ships, and they're tagged with their displacement. I'm going by memory here. They're tagged with their displacement tonnage, and you can basically just like print them out and arrange them side by side and make ships.
That's right.
And total
they're geomorphs. So
yeah.
And he's added then wings or fronts and backs, so that it's not just a section of the Death Star. You can do your dreadnought or whatever, big ships, little ships, whatever you want to do. So he's the one that's currently on drive-through is version 2. He's upgraded it. He also has one called Adventure Class ships. Now, Traveler defines ships. Adventure Class ships are the ones you make in Classic Traveler, the ones that players have. Battle Class ships are the big ones, and then Fleet Class ships are huge things that who knows,
like colony ships or something.
Yeah, so he's done Adventure Class ships. It's a companion volume which is focusing on smaller ships. For some reason the fonts aren't embedded properly, and so you can get the PDF, but it doesn't print very well. I'm trying to work with him. In fact, I've been trying to work with him. He's trying to work with me, trying to get that set up. I sent him another email today when I was looking at it, seeing if we can get that put together. It's a great resource to have as a game master.
Yeah, I haven't seen the second edition, but I've seen the first edition, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is.
What do you think of Second Dynasty and their 3D ships? Do you have a 3D Beowulf?
I do, and I've got a 3D like pinnace.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's not for everybody because not all of us are 3D printer oriented. But I ordered one from a producer. It's almost overwhelming. But my goodness, it is that big.
What's it like to see your idea in 3D? Who designed it? Did you design the original Beowulf?
I designed it. You know.
And so, what's it like to see in real life?
It's flattering, I'm pleased with how it turned out because it's not necessarily rational. I mean, I like things not being rational. I like it, oh, we designed it this way, but you got to have a little stairway that twists over here to get through because those things don't fit very well. That's real,
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. And, oh, that's hard to do. But we designed the Beowulf so that there could be gunfights on it.
Mm-hmm.
For gunfights with my little miniatures, hiding behind the jump drive.
Right. I was watching the designer put it together in CAD. He was running a Twitch stream, and yeah, he was like, "Oh, these don't necessarily fit." And he's like making some adjustments, but I was like, "Hey, it fits on paper, and that's really just what mattered."
That's all
when it was designed. People really try to like nitpick every little like last ounce of displacement space and stuff, and to me I'm just like, is it close enough? Because no one's gonna come weigh this thing or measure it out, and as long as it's not grossly out of whack, it's close enough. Don't fuss over, it's not gonna give you a huge advantage if you went over by a ton.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember is that they made very strict restrictions on what Japanese and British ships could have as displacement in the 30s in these naval treaties. And then you kind of find out that they didn't even pay attention to the final ship is 5,000 tons over what it was allowed. But that's okay. We got it built anyway.
Right. So, we're coming up on the Traveler 50th anniversary. 50th. Yeah, 50th. What do you got planned?
2027 is the 50th anniversary. 50th July 22nd, I think is the birthday. And Mongoose is talking about doing a year-long celebration. Don't wait until then. There's plenty of stuff before then. But they're really talking about doing a big celebration with a lot of interesting products, and nothing has been locked in yet, so I don't know. But
all right, cool.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of people are talking about how excited they are for it. So there's some high expectations. I hope Matt's. I'm sure Matt will live up to it. He's always come through. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with. I mean, for what it's worth, just as the consumer, I'm pretty happy with their stewardship of the product personally. So I'm glad with everything that's been going on. So what about the next year between now and next Mayday? What you got? Do you have any projects planned or anything that you plan to release between then and now?
Well, I said I'm going to do a Kickstarter for the first of comic book things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not practical to do one comic book at a time. And as a reader or a buyer, I'm not happy. I don't want one comic book at a time. I want to binge read the whole set. And so I'm looking at doing a 3-book Beowulf comic set in August. And at the end of that time, then I can order them from the comic book printer, but the pieces will already be done. And so as soon as the Kickstarter ends, I can send links for the downloads of the PDFs, and you get them right away. And then The printed pieces will come in 2 months or something like that.
Gotcha. And then what's the plan with, like, Will You Survive? Are you going to produce that with also like as a 3-book set or multi-part set?
I've got 4 series that I'm looking at. One is the Beowulf series. One is what I call a guide to small craft, starships, vehicles, equipment, starports. I mean, that'd be a nice set to have on my table. And when somebody says starport, here's something that shows what you can expect at the starport, a Class B starport.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one which is the story of the ancients and their nemesis, the hydrogens, and some other stuff in the Traveler universe beyond charted space. So there's that.
Mm.
Then yeah, and the last one is the Can You Survive, which is character generation, followed by Let's Play Traveler, and it's talking about basics of, you make your decisions, but the dice control the outcome with whatever, and player agency, and it really talks about how to be a good player. And the third one there is, my mantra is every adventure begins and ends at a starport. In D&D, it's in the tavern. And for me, it's in the starport. It isn't over until you get back to a starport. Any starport's fine, but you got to get back to a starport, and then we have a place to start the next time we meet to adventure. So I'm kind of telling about the things that I'm working on that I think will be fun. I'm trying to get them put together. But the first one is in August with the. I'll just interject here, and I'm going to give you a link. I have this short story that people can download. When we did a Kickstarter for Traveler some time ago, I promised that I would put people's names on the wall of heroes. And so I commissioned a picture, and this thing has a link to the wall of heroes. And if you had backed the Traveler Kickstarter, your name is up there in little tiny, and it's actually in 10 letters 10 feet tall, carved on a hill, on a cliffside on some world somewhere. But then the short story talks about that particular event. So.
That's cool. Kind of another thing that I always liked about Traveler was the way you had like ID cards and letters of not of Marc, but like letters of nobility, and different kinds of like the money, different kinds of like real world artifacts that were kind of in Traveler. And it kind of gave me a funny idea recently when I put together a game of people who didn't all know each other, and they all had fresh characters. So I went down to Home Depot and I got name tags, and then I made corporate name tags for everybody and made them wear them. I just said their name on there, and so everybody knew their characters and stuff. And it was pretty. It had who they were, their position on the ship, and everybody worked for the same company. So didn't have they were getting their jobs from basically the corporate patron. But it was fun because everybody learned their names and their positions pretty fast, and they looked forward to like putting their name tag on when they came to play. So there's those kinds of things, and coins, and all those things are they're real world tangible, what I want to say, just kind of like touchstones or like things that inspire your imagination.
Absolutely.
It's kind of what it would look like,
And it ends up being in-game stuff. I have something called a personal identifier. And you can get one for the 4518th Infantry Regiment. And, it's one of these challenge coins that the military gives out. But, it sparks my imagination because high-tech things, you have one of those, and it tells your weapons in your regiment not to shoot at you. I think that that's a great idea. If you have something that tells somebody that I'm friendly, I'm on your side, don't, and the gun realizes it and doesn't shoot you.
Right.
It makes for an interesting and it makes for an interesting game situation. Then somebody's shooting him, and it just misses you. Great little stories to.
Right. And then can you scavenge those and use them, to get behind enemy lines, or, if they're implanted, do you dig them out of the enemy soldier? How gross is that? Put them in your pocket,
So, and it talks about how if on Beowulf, they have it and it tracks your snack usage and bills your ticket, and
how many copies you made.
and it says that if you're a high passenger, this personal identifier, this challenge coin, is a free complimentary souvenir of your voyage. If you're a middle passenger, you have to turn it in at the end. You can keep it for a 25 credit charge, and
that's hilarious.
Low passengers don't need it.
Here's a picture of you in the cryo chamber. $25. So, all right, we're getting close to wrapping up. What's your, you have plans for Gen Con this year?
I'm going to visit Gen Con this year. I'm planning on attending and having a booth next year.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be fun. And of course, absolutely going to have one in 2027. A birthday party booth.
When you go, do you generally have a booth, or do you go as an attendee, or do you sometimes do a talk, or how do you generally do that?
I haven't been to Gen Con regularly. I go to Gamehole Con in Madison, Wisconsin. But I for the next couple of years, I want to go to Gen Con. Next year, I won't have events this year, but next year, I'm going to have a booth and have events. And then in 2027, I'll have a booth and events.
Awesome. All right, cool. Do you have time to answer my some silly questions from my table of amazing questions?
Absolutely.
Great. So I made this D66 table. So if you have some six-siders handy.
I have a six-sider. I'm going to roll it twice.
That's all you need.
So it's a 4.
Okay.
And that's a 2.
Okay, 42.
42.
If the Imperium suddenly drafted you, what branch of service would you want to be in?
I want the freedom of action of a scout. I want to be a scout with my own ship, and that way I can decide what to do and save my hide if I need to.
I scattered the enemy and then I left. All right. Let's roll again.
Okay. A 1 and a 4.
14. If you could visit any planet in the Traveler universe, where would you go first?
Regina. I mean, I know what that planet is.
What's the appeal?
It's Norris's home planet, and I know some of the secrets of the world, and I'd like to visit them.
All right. Good answer. All right, let's do another.
3, 6.
What's the wildest starport bar story your Traveler characters have ever been involved in?
I wrote that up.
We'll have to read about it.
And so basically the story is, and I wrote it up. It's like a 2-page comic. It's a comic book thing, but it's a traveler bar story, and they're sitting around and talking to this guy. We call him Jonah, and he just tells stories. And and as long as you keep feeding him drinks, he'll tell you stories about strange places and whatever. And he talks about being attacked by a giant space whale. Black ship is what I call him. It's one of the threads that I use. And he gets swallowed by it, and just down through the gut, and he comes to a great. It leads him to a great glowing chamber, and his wounds are healed, and he feels the happiest he's ever felt in his life. And then he keeps going through the gut and pooped out the other end of the the space whale. And he's telling this story, and do we believe him? I'm not sure we do.
All right, one more.
Where do you get these questions? You must have worked at these questions.
I did.
That was a 3, and that was a 5.
What's your go-to traveler character type? Scout, Marine, Merchant, etc.
Noble.
Noble?
Noble.
How come?
Yeah. Oh, I like the freedom of action. I like the power.
The bankroll. Having a wad of cash to fund your travels.
One of the things that I think about all these things a lot, and traveler characters want money, but you don't want so much money that you're a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk, because your life is consumed with money. And you want just enough money that you don't have to work hard, but enough to have a ship so you can go do adventures. But you don't want to have so much money that people are all around you asking you, decide this, decide that, what's going to happen next. I like the freedom of action of a noble, because theoretically he can just do whatever he wants.
Right. Like the dilettante class. I mean, you're rich and you just dabble in whatever your interests are and
do what you want.
Do what you want. All right. All good answers. All right, Marc. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or find your products?
Best way is to go to farfuture.net or traveler5.net. And those sites are about buying things. You want to talk about traveler stuff, go to Citizens of the Imperium, or just go to the Traveler Wiki or Traveler Map. Wow, Traveler Worlds from Jonathan Sherlock. If you need to talk to me, I always am responsive. I like to sell you things, but I'll pretty much do whatever you want in terms of trying to help you out.
Do you lurk around on the social sites, and if so, which ones?
I don't.
Okay. But you could see something if somebody asked a question on Citizens of the Imperium?
Probably not. Just send me a note. If somebody saw it and sent it to me, yes, but otherwise I don't lurk.
Gotcha.
Or not that I'll admit.
Right. Okay.
I may end up on Facebook or somewhere and see something and answer somebody randomly, but those are not reliable ways of communicating with me.
But there's links on your website, though, that could send messages to you.
On the other hand, you send me an emails rather than texts. And if there's something that is in my power to do, I'll probably do it.
Awesome. All right.
And I'll point out that when people buy things from me, go to the website. The CD-ROMs are really bargains. All that stuff on one CD-ROM. And I throw in other stuff. I still have decks of cards that we made when we did Traveler 5. And so I may throw that in, or one of these short stories that I printed up, or something. Just because I've got things that are interesting and I'd like to share them. So
it's nice to get those little surprises. I have a friend who runs a jewelry supply, and they throw little candies in with their with their orders when they ship them, and people appreciate getting the little prize, you know.
So much of things are industrial. You ordered this thing, here it is. Traveler is a way of life. I mean, the people who order from me want this stuff because it's part of their life, and I agree, it's part of my life too, and I like sharing that with people.
I'll tell you, it's kind of a thrill to get an envelope marked, you know, Export Express, and marked up like a package from the travel world. You know, it's pretty cool, honestly. So that's cool. Thanks for doing that. All right, Marc, I'm gonna let you get on with your day. Thank you so much for sitting for this interview and being such a good sport, and thanks for providing the world with a game like Traveler. It's opened up so many people's minds and inspired so much imagination. It's really a gift to the world, so thank you.
It's equally a thrill to have so many people who enjoy this, you know, and I say it's Traveler is a mechanism by which people can express themselves, and it's so gratifying to see people enjoying something that I've had a hand in trying to shape. But it's all of our universe, not just mine. I like to say it this way, and sometimes somebody says, I've got this, and not that. But people enjoy putting the world together, and they have a good time, and I just am so pleased to be part of it.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much. And thank you, dear listeners. Until next time, happy traveling. Don't fly solo through the galaxy. Click like to join our alliance. Subscribe for your crew pass, and enable notifications to never miss an encounter. This journey is fueled by my patrons. Thank you, patrons. Feel the thrill of discovery. Become a patron and join the adventure.